Today I'm joined by Christina King, the Chief People Officer at YouFoodz. Established in 2012, YouFoodz has become an Australian leading brand that provides fresh ready-made meals, protein-packed snacks and cold-pressed juice, and available at now over 4,000 locations. Around 4 to 5 years ago, the proud Brisbane-based company experienced incredible growth, which saw the team increase up to 800, with 600 in the production team alone. Christina joined the company in 2018 and is an important member of the executive leadership team, who are all individually now working with executive performance partners. Thank you so much for your time today, and thank you for sharing your story about how you are working with executive performance partners.
Thanks, Sarah.
Before we get started though, I want to hear more about you. Tell me about your career to date and what led you and how you came to be working with YouFoodz.
Well, I've been working in human resources for over 20 years now. Originally, my first job was in an organisational psychologist organisation. Had a few of roles similar to that, and then got my first role as an HR officer with a retail business. Had the opportunity in that particular role to be involved in some fantastic projects around organisational culture, acquisitions, training programs, etc. And following that, really continued to build my career after that through different industries and different roles. I studied part-time through all those years and ultimately have worked in retail, automotive, health, education, just to name a few, I suppose, and then landed here at YouFoodz in 2018. My role here is really to optimise the HR capital, which we call our YFM, to really drive to the organisational performance.
You've got an incredible role. You have 800 staff, obviously in blue and white collar. How do you manage such a diverse team?
For my team in P&C, it's very important to me that we are all multi-skilled. So I have payroll, workforce planning, human resources, training, and a few others in there as well. So it's very important to me that everyone understands the other portions of the people and culture department and can step in to help out when required. In terms of the larger YFM, the 800, we do have blue and white collar, absolutely. What we try to do is to really understand deeply the core differences between the two groups, particularly around motivations, development requirements, organisational culture factors, and then develop programs and initiatives to make sure that we're really tailoring those outcomes to those groups.
You mentioned development programs. I understand that you were the connector that brought executive performance partners to the executive team at YouFoodz. Talk me through why you decided to take that challenge on and why you brought EPP into the team.
Yeah. Leadership has gathered such a fundamental following, I suppose, throughout the recent decades, and this business, having had, as you mentioned, such a huge growth trajectory, has had a lot of people build and grow within the business. What we lacked was that leadership from the executive team to really drive performance across the company. I had met Dave Munro as I was onboarding into YouFoodz originally in 2018. And what struck me was that he was incredibly passionate about development of people, but he also had a very straightforward approach that didn't rely on jargon or conceptual ideas. He really drilled down into the core deliverables and practical elements of what we had to do. We had researched to several providers to look at our executive development program. Ultimately though, we went with Dave and executive performance partners because of that very approach.
And I understand that each of the 7 in the executive leadership team have their own program that's very tailored to their own personal journey. Mm-hmm. Talk me through your journey and what does that look like for you?
For me, there's a few elements. First and foremost is really around people and culture. I've talked with you previously and also with Dave about the perception of people and culture in businesses generally. And often we have been seen as very administratively focused, perhaps a cost to the business rather than an area of investment. And so for me, one of the scorecard items is really to elevate people and culture to be seen as a true partner, value add in what we're doing, and really assist in delivering those success measures that we have as a business. Second one for me was really around building my professional confidence. I've been in senior roles for more than 10 years now, but often the only female in the room, often from P&C perspective, the function that maybe doesn't have as much impact from the organisation's view as, say, operations or finance. So really building my personal confidence to make sure that I have a voice and that I can add value to those conversations. And lastly, outside of my work here, I am a non-executive director on a board, and so for me that's a long-term career planning point. I would like to use the leadership skills that I'm gathering along the way with EPP to really round me out to be as effective non-executive director as I can be in 10, 15, 20 years' time.
I know it's been a short period of time that you've been working with executive performance partners, but have you started to see results already, and how do you know that this is working?
I think there has been some observable differences in how the executive team interact, and certainly from how their self-awareness is in their performance. There seems to be a lot of recognition at our executive meetings around calling out perhaps areas of opportunity or gaps for themselves and feeling that they're safe to do that. I think that's probably very important. Second, in terms of the cohesion for the entire team, there is an openness and actually a strong desire to encourage others to participate in these particular programs and projects to build our chances of being incredibly successful in those things.
And I know executive performance partners pride themselves in having a unique session with each person that's tailored to their needs, but also their style of learning and adapting new habits. Talk me through your individual program. What does it look like? How often do you meet? What are the core goals that are set in each session?
Yeah, we meet in person or, depending on COVID restrictions, via Zoom every fortnight, and that's an hour session. In that hour session, there is a huge amount of flexibility. Typically, the core components will be, what have you done, what will you be doing, and what have you changed? Interspliced in that though, when we've had some significant events in the organisation, we've really had the opportunity to chat through those with Dave, unpack them, him give us some guidance in a way that isn't prescriptive. He helps you to move through the situation and achieve a really positive and effective outcome.
A key part of executive performance partners is setting up a scorecard for success, which means that they're accountable, but there's also this constant review of those achieved goals. What does that look like for you particularly?
Our scorecard in People and Culture is aligned to our strategic plan, of course, and rolled down through our success measures that we've identified as a business. There's 7 of them this financial year. Outside of that, everything else that my team delivers is really aligned to assisting the other departments to deliver their outcomes. And that at the moment can focus on anything from attraction and retention of staff in this very candidate short market. It can focus on professionalisation for the groups to make sure that they're as well skilled as possible, or it may focus on specific organisational culture factors for that particular area. So we do align quite in a specialised way, I suppose, to make sure they're getting that very tailored solution.
Amazing. And one of the things I hear a lot from this conversation is team and filtering down to the team. Have you found that in the short period of time that you've been working with executive performance partners, yourself and your peers in executive leadership, has that started to filter down to the bigger organisation, in your opinion?
I think so, yes. There are pockets where we're seeing it more than others, and certainly departments where we see it more than others. Our operations team, for example, you mentioned 600 in our production team, takes a little bit longer to work through, but certainly there's been some positive comments from members of teams in corporate areas particularly who've noticed some behavioural change in their executives and really are responding very positively to it. So absolutely, the work that's being done with executive performance partners is really, in my view, paying off.
And one of the key things that we've spoken before, but also I know David's very passionate about, is the establishment of new habits. What would you say have been the new habits that you've already developed?
Well, one is signposting, and so we've talked about that before, really trying to lay out very clearly for my team, my peers, my manager in Lance, about what I'm going to do and why I'm going to do it and how it links to what we're trying to achieve. The second one, which I'm not doing so great at, is active recovery. Dave and I talk about that fairly frequently. You know, everyone's very busy, trying to find time to make either time for yourself to then be more productive in your hours that you are spending on work, or in my case, spending time trying to be bored for a little bit because I love variety so much. I have seen it pay dividends, but I'm not practicing that habit enough just yet.
Maybe when we speak in another 12 months, it will be there.
Fingers crossed.
If you had to sum up the partnership that you have with Executive Performance Partners for you personally in a sentence, or if you had to describe it quickly to a colleague or a network or a peer, how would you describe it?
Valuable, effective, and tailored would be the 3 words I would choose. It really, without a doubt, has changed in a positive sense how we do things here at YouFoodz.
And lastly, would you recommend them to your peers?
Absolutely, yes, without a doubt.
Thank you so much for your time. It's been a privilege to talk to you.
Thanks, Sarah.